For joining us. I'm Michael Bain. I think most of you know me. I used to be famous, but it cleared up like really having a bad cold. But the odd thing about doing 930-minute episodes on television is I will be on television long after I have left the building, which is kind of creepy. But in any case, of course, welcome to the Lucid Ballistic Summit. And lots of media get generated here. There's a list for social media here, so everything that goes out to everybody. It'll all be shared, which will make it really useful. Basically, the setup's pretty straightforward. People here talk about the product, just as you guys did with whiskey last night, although it won't taste nearly as good when you drink it. It just tastes like coffee number 9. But any questions to ask? Yeah, you've got people here that you can peg them, you can ask questions of them. We'll start out with the bishops, who I've now known for like roughly 100, 200 years. But the initial thing with the bishops was the things I found that was interesting was they were doing things other people weren't doing. 458 lever gun, 458 SOCOM, interesting little cartridge, 4570 ballistics. I have a early version of this rifle, 458 bolt gun. Shoots amazingly well. 458 was never legendary for its target ability, if you will. So we'll just start off. Merrisa, go ahead and launch in here, and let's talk.
Well, a little background about me. I'm a trained lawyer, 32 years, and this is my retirement. The firearms don't come back and ask for refunds or retainers. So this is actually my love. I've been in shooting since I was 6 years old. I'm 65. My father was a card-carrying member of the Irish Republican Army. And Grandpa literally was an illegal alien and on the terrorist watch list in the 50s and 60s. But that being said, I got into the firearms industry in 2008 when I bought a 1911 and discovered there was no 45 auto ammo. So I called my old man and said, "Hey, Pops, we used to reload." He gave me this formula, and the biggest suggestion he ever made was you find the powder and load data, your formula, that fits your gun. Not what other people want, not what other people say it should be, but what works. So with that thought, I developed our first 45 auto load, which we still make and market. And the groups got smaller and smaller and smaller. So the people at the range, seeing my groups getting like impossibly small, all of a sudden wanted to buy my ammo, which led to us getting a license, which led to our first warehouse and our first 4 machines. From there, we expanded to 9mm 45 Colt, both cartridges we continue to make today. We have one customer that orders 10,000 45 Colt at a time. And he'll have customers around this building waiting for the delivery because we tell them when we're going to drop it off. It's been reviewed. It's incredibly fun round to shoot. I got into competition in 3-gun. And that led to our first rifle. I don't have it here. It's an older design. It's got over 3,000 rounds on it, but it's still just as tight when I first made it as it is today. We will have it at SHOT Show. And it's a AR-15 Professional that we do, a 3-gun rifle, and it markets at just under $2,000, including Cerakote. Comes with an adjustable trigger, 2 3/4 pounds to 4.5. All of our AR platforms use the same trigger. It's made by Elfman out of Arizona. And our bolt actions also use the Elf match adjustable trigger, which is adjustable from under 2 ounces up to 64. So the AR-15 led me into building our first 458 SOCOM, which was an AR-15. And I introduced it at a 3-gun match, and the men I was competing against didn't want to shoot it because one person said he wasn't man enough to shoot it, and they couldn't hit anything. So I picked it up and put 8 rounds on a plate at 200 yards. It's easy to do once you learn the gun. Plus, I designed the gun and loaded the ammo. So it was kind of cheating. Michael saw that rifle at SHOT Show. And just before our first SHOT Show in 2018, we were at the next pavilion and I had our 458 SOCOM. The first version of this rifle was based on the Remington 700. And it, quite literally, the only way you could tell the difference between my receiver and a Remington receiver is that mine was a lot beefier. I tend to overbuild things. Dad told me if you're going to do something, do it right, do it once, or don't do it at all. So I spent about 1.5 years just designing the receiver, and when we showed up with it, I had the Mark I version of this. And Mike showed up and said, hey, I hear you have a rifle that people say can't be done. And I go, which one is that? And he goes, bolt action 458, they all jam. They all have jamming problems. And I basically handed Michael the rifle, a bunch of dummies, loaded the magazine and said, try and make it jam. He couldn't. Here was our first sale.
The AI linked magazines are inconsistent with a cartridge that's short.
Yeah.
So we use a modified AIS magazine that uses a spacer system in it. This is the 4th generation that we use. The internals are carbon fiber 3D printed by us. The spring is your basic AICS that I cut down, and the magazine itself. And I've gone from taking an entire day to make one magazine to 15 minutes. And the whole secret of the firearm is the magazine and the design of the receiver at the feed area. A lot of people, when they do the 458 SOCOM, they forget that that great big fat shoulder likes to bind as it comes up the ramp, and the magazine wheel comes in as a polygon. You get rid of that polygon shape, it'll eat anything. You know, if the receiver was long enough, it'll even eat a 50 BMG. You just have to get rid of that pinch point. So I started talking with Heller Enterprises, and they make our barrels, tactical ordnance. The barrel on this rifle and the one on Mike's is an EV5 match grade barrel. It's not your standard 458 SOCOM. I guarantee sub-minute accuracy with a 458 SOCOM. I have put 8 rounds in the size of a $50 at 100 yards with this. And you can do it all day long. Matter of fact, it gets to the point where I get tired of shooting it because I only have one hole. This new receiver, unlike the Remington, has a bolt that has the side release, bolt release, instead of on the bottom pushing up. Makes it a lot easier to maintain the rifle, a lot easier to clean. This bolt and receiver is now made for us by Pristine out of Canada. And I saw them 2 years ago at SHOT Show and asked them if they would be interested in helping me redesign our receiver, and they gladly said yes. So our new bolt is a Pristine bolt. It has 6 locking lugs instead of 2. It has 2 ejectors instead of 1. It has the SOCOM extractor. And this thing is like, it's on roller bearings. And you just lock it down. This is probably one of the most fun guns I have to shoot. It's also the most popular. We have 3 dozen in South Carolina, Georgia, Kentucky, Kansas, Florida, and we have another dozen in Texas, and they're all used to hunt bear and hawks. And it's available in 4 different stocks. We have the MDT field stock, which we just started using. The stock that Michael has is the Magpul Hunter. It's the lightest. Also the one you feel the recoil the most with. Then we have both the walnut by Boyd's, or we can do it in maple. And there's no change in price. MSRP on this rifle, as it sits here without the scope, with the match trigger and barrel, is $3,000. And we will shoot this one today. 458 SOCOM hammer. This is also a Mark II version. The original one had a standard side charger, not side charger, charging handle. And at SHOT Show, I was going around and I stumbled by this booth of a small company called Gibbs. They're out of California, and discovered that they make side chargers. So I started looking at all the side chargers at SHOT Show. And this one here is the beefiest one, and I wanted to use it for the 475 Magnum because I was starting to break upper receivers. And I was using the Aero Precisions, and they still would eventually crack. I went to the Gibbs, and I have yet to have one fail. So now I believe we're the only one running a side-charging 458 SOCOM AR. We build this in any color Cerakote that you want. The FX colors, which this is, I believe, the Ranger. And this changes color outside like a pearl paint job. This is another $250 for the FX color. The barrel is also an EV5 match, the brake I designed, and is made for us by a machine company in Pocatello, Idaho. I'm only having them machine it because I don't have a lathe anymore. So they go ahead and make the brakes for us. And this, of course, does use the side charger, and this is non-reciprocating. So when you charge this weapon and you pull the trigger, this stays place, does not move. And again, this one has the adjustable ELF trigger, the titanium takedown pins, and it's adjustable on the inside. You do not have to take the trigger out to adjust it. And I can adjust the pull weight simply by turning this knob. Another nice reason why we use the ELF is that it has a two-stage safety. If I have this weapon and it's locked and loaded and I drop it, a lot of AR-15s can discharge. This one goes to a half-cock position and cannot discharge. So I feel it's probably one of the safest 458s on the market. And we also built that with a folding stock. The next weapon I have on the list is nostalgic for me. When I was in the Army, I was in the 511th MP Company, and I got out of training 1 week before I ended up on a stupid little island shooting at Cubans. What I carried was the Colt 603, which is the last version of the M16A1. This is an exact copy of that rifle with the one exception. This is semi-auto. And I even went so critical as to say, not property of US government, using their same font. This rifle will pretty much eat anything you want to shove down its throat, from 5.56 55 grain ball all the way up to match ammo. It's a 20-inch chrome lined barrel, just like the original. And just like the original, I can still hit a man-sized target at 400 yards with this offhand. Chris will be demonstrating this later today, and when it runs, it almost looks like it's on full auto when you can run it. It's amazingly fun to shoot. Uses any standard M16 magazine. As with all of our firearms, I always suggest steel. They last the longest, they feed the best. The rifle that we have the most interest in is, well, this one's a close second, is our 475 Magnum AR-10. This rifle is the heaviest gun I've made. It weighs about 12.5 pounds without the scope. And this throws a 390 grain bullet, 475 caliber that I designed at 2,400 feet per second. The 308 or 7.62 NATO throws a 147 grain bullet at the same speed. Maximum effective range on this is 1,000 yards. We will be shooting it today out to 1,300. It's available in 3 different projectiles, a 150 grain soft jacket hollow point made by Hawk Precision. And the owner of Andy with Hawk Precision says, we can use that for deer. I have yet to try it because I've shot the 390 jacketed hollow point into a pumpkin at 100 yards and vaporized it. It looked like it had tannerite in it. The only reason you can tell it wasn't tannerite is there was no smoke, no flash, no bang. But it was a perfectly spherical explosion. This uses standard AR-10 magazines. Again, I prefer steel. We use the Lancers, which are a polymer magazine, but they have the hardened steel upper part, and that's the secret of the gun. This came into existence on a dare. 4 years ago, I was at an after party at SHOT Show, and I was talking to the owner of the 500 Automax and also the owner of the AR-500. And they had their rifle and gun there, and they were all proud of it. It's a great gun. It's a straight wall 500 Smith & Wesson that's rebated. I looked at this, and I started thinking about the ballistics. I go, this is 2,100 feet per second. I go, when do you go subsonic? They said 400 yards. And I'm like, you got a lot more room in the start chamber. If you go the diameter of the start chamber and neck it down, you'll pick up 300 to 500 feet per second. He's like, it won't feed. That became my hold my beer moment. Quite literally. Went home, and on a napkin, I started to design the cartridge. On the way back, we stopped at a gas station that had those stupid little lighters that look like bullets. And that's when it crystallized in my head as to what it's going to look like. I proceeded to design it. The base on our cartridge is .589, almost 0.6 of an inch in diameter. The shoulder is 5.77. Overall cartridge length is identical to the 308. And we run about 69,000 PSI. We have loaded it to 78 grains. The case will hold 80 grains of H.335, but if you do, don't do it. We have shot it at 76 at SHOT Show. We'll be shooting at 74.5 grains today. That is the standard load, 74.5 of H.335. And what makes this rifle run, it uses a standard 308 bolt carrier. The cartridge is actually fed through a central. It doesn't double stack like a regular AR-15 and then feed from left or right. It feeds right from the middle, just like a Glock magazine. The firearm doesn't care. It gets its food, it goes bang. And that is how I get around the shoulder issue of it coming in at an angle and locking. If I did try and do it the way everyone else feeds an AR-10, it will jam. If you go center feed, gun doesn't care. But there's so much bolt thrust on this gun, I have to use a standard 308 bolt carrier, because if you take away metal to fit a Magnum base head, it'll break bolts. I did the math, I spoke with KAK, and they said, no, you've got too much bolt thrust and too much muzzle blast. This thing makes 5,500 foot-pounds of muzzle energy at max load. And I still get a 99.7% powder burn on the 24-inch barrel. It has an adjustable gas block because there's so much pressure when this thing fires. Normally when you have a stovepipe, you're undergassed. The bolt carrier group's not going back far enough, and it's catching the spent cartridge or casing as it's coming out, causing it to stick out. On this, if that happens, you're overgassed. That means the bolt carrier group is moving too fast. On the adjustable gas block, we have it open 1 1/4 to 1.5 turns from closed. There's that much pressure. And if we used a standard buffer on it, again, I would be breaking the gun. Our buffer that I designed and is made by us is tungsten, and it weighs 11.4 ounces, almost twice the weight of a standard bolt carrier group. It does a couple of things for us. It slows the BCG down and helps absorb the recoil. If I have this in a bolt action rifle, of which I've built one, it's painful to shoot. I believe, Michael, you shot that. And I was good 4 rounds and sold the gun and said, thank you, goodbye. This thing feels like you're shooting a 12-gauge Magnum with the break. And we also will sell those buffers individually. Awesome. But here's a cool thing about our gun is that if you have an AR-10 lower, our upper will fit any AR-10 DPMS-pattern lower. So you can have an Anderson, take your upper off at 308, put mine on, and you're now 475 with our magazine and buffer. That's it. You use your bullet carrier group, your lower, your trigger assembly, and it will run.